Hey there, and welcome to True Scary Stories. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling us where you're from and what time you're watching. That helps YouTube know you love creepy stories, and it'll keep sending more your way.
3 most scary true trucker horror stories. The open road. Miles of empty highway stretching into darkness. For most people, it's just a way to get from point A to point B. But for truckers, those long, lonely stretches become something else entirely when the sun goes down. They see things out there that most of us never will. Things that don't make sense. Things that shouldn't exist. These are 7 stories from real truck drivers who encountered something on the road that they'll never forget. Something that still keeps them up at night. Story 1. The Hitchhiker Who Wouldn't Leave. Back in 2019, a trucker named Dale was hauling a load of electronics from Tennessee to Wyoming. It was one of those long hauls, the kind where you're on the road for days, sleeping at truck stops, eating gas station food, and watching the white lines on the highway blur together. Dale had been driving for about 16 years at that point. He knew the routes, knew the stops, knew which rest areas were safe and which ones you avoided after dark. He'd seen his share of weird stuff out there, sure. Deer standing in the road at night, their eyes reflecting like demons in his headlights. Fog so thick you couldn't see 5 feet ahead. But nothing, he said, had ever prepared him for what happened that October night. It was around 2 in the morning. Dale was somewhere in Nebraska on a stretch of Route 30 that cut through absolutely nothing. No towns, no houses. Just cornfields on both sides, dead and harvested, leaving behind empty dirt that looked black in the darkness, the kind of road where you don't see another car for an hour. His headlights caught something up ahead. A figure, standing on the shoulder, thumb out. Now Dale had a strict rule about hitchhikers. Never pick them up, ever. Doesn't matter if they're a little old lady or a college kid, you just don't do it. Too many horror stories from other drivers, too many close calls. But as he got closer, something made him slow down. The person was a woman, maybe in her 30s, wearing a light blue dress that looked way too thin for October weather. No jacket, no bag, just standing there with her thumb out, completely still. Her hair was long and dark, hanging down past her shoulders, and even from a distance Dale could see she looked wrong, pale, too pale. He should have kept driving. Every instinct told him to keep driving, but something about the way she stood there, not moving, not even turning her head as his truck approached, made him stop. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was curiosity. He still doesn't know. Dale pulled over, his air brakes hissing in the quiet night. He rolled down his passenger window and looked out at her. She didn't move toward the truck, just stood there, staring straight ahead at nothing. "You need help?" Dale called out. She turned her head slowly, and that's when Dale got his first good look at her face. She was smiling, but it wasn't a normal smile. It was too wide, stretching her face in a way that didn't look right. Her eyes were dark, reflecting nothing in the glow of his cab light. "I need a ride," she said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Every alarm in Dale's head was going off now. Something was very, very wrong. But he'd already stopped, already engaged. Backing out now felt dangerous somehow. "Where are you headed?" he asked, keeping his hand near the door lock button. "Forward," she said. Just that. Forward. Dale's stomach turned. "Look, I don't really pick up. Let me in." It wasn't a request. The way she said it, still with that too wide smile, made Dale's blood run cold. He should have hit the gas, should have driven away right then. But his hand moved on its own, unlocking the door. He watched in horror as his own finger pressed the button, heard the click of the lock disengaging. The woman opened the door and climbed up into the cab. Up close, she smelled like wet dirt and something else, something rotting. She sat down in the passenger seat and closed the door, still smiling that horrible smile. Dale's heart was hammering. "Listen, I can take you to the next town, but that's..." "Drive," she said. And he did. He put the truck in gear and pulled back onto the highway, his hands shaking on the wheel. He didn't know why he was listening to her, didn't know why he couldn't just stop the truck and tell her to get out. It was like his body was moving on autopilot, following orders from something he couldn't control. They drove in silence for maybe 10 minutes. Dale kept glancing over at her. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead through the windshield. She didn't blink, not once. Her chest didn't move like she was breathing. "What's your name?" Dale finally asked, trying to break the suffocating silence. She didn't answer, didn't even acknowledge he'd spoken. "Okay," he muttered. "Okay." Another 5 minutes passed. The highway stretched on, empty and dark. No other cars, no lights anywhere except his headlights cutting through the blackness. Dale was starting to think about pulling over, about forcing her out of the truck somehow, when she finally spoke. "I died here," she said, still staring forward. Dale's blood went ice cold. "What?" "Right here. This spot. I died right here." Dale looked at the road, at the empty fields on either side. There was nothing. No markers, no signs of an accident, just empty highway. I don't understand," he stammered. She turned to look at him then, and Dale nearly drove off the road. Her face had changed. The skin was gray now, stretched tight over her skull. Her eyes had sunken back into her head, leaving dark, hollow pits. Her smile was gone, replaced by a thin line of a mouth that opened just slightly, showing darkness inside. "You stopped," she whispered. "You stopped where I died. You let me in." Dale slammed on the brakes. The truck screeched to a halt in the middle of the highway. He fumbled for the door lock, finally found his voice. "Get out of my truck right now." She didn't move, just sat there, that horrible corpse face staring at him. "Get out!" Dale was screaming now, his voice cracking. "You have to take me home," she said, her voice wet and thick, like she was talking through mud. "No, no, get the hell out!" Dale reached across to open her door, to push her out if he had to, but when his hand touched her arm, it went right through, like she wasn't solid, like she was made of smoke. He jerked his hand back with a yell. "You can laugh." It was a horrible sound, gurgling and wrong. "You can't touch me. You let me in. Now you have to take me home." Dale didn't know what to do. He sat there, breathing hard, staring at this thing in his passenger seat. Then he made a decision. He threw the truck in gear and started driving as fast as he could. If she wanted to go forward, he'd go forward. He'd drive until the sun came up, until he reached the next town, until he found someone who could help him. But she was still there, still sitting, still staring, and now she was talking, whispering things he couldn't quite hear but that made his skin crawl, whispering about the accident, about how long she'd been waiting, about how many trucks had passed her by. "You're the first one who stopped in so long, so long. They all just drive past. They see me and they drive past." Dale kept driving, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The highway seemed endless now, like it would never end, like he'd be driving forever with this thing next to him. Dawn started to break after what felt like hours. The sky lightened to gray, then pink, then blue, and as the sun crept over the horizon, Dale felt something change. The air in the cab got warmer. The smell of rot faded. He looked over at the passenger seat. It was empty. She was gone. Just gone, like she'd never been there at all. Dale pulled over at the next rest stop and sat there for an hour, shaking, trying to process what had happened. He checked the cab, looked for any sign she'd been there, but there was nothing. No smell, no marks on the seat. Nothing. He still drives trucks, still takes that route through Nebraska sometimes, but he never stops for hitchhikers anymore. And late at night, when he passes that stretch of Route 30, he keeps his eyes straight ahead, because sometimes, just in his peripheral vision, he swears he can see her standing there on the shoulder, thumb out, waiting for the next driver who'll make the mistake of stopping.
Story 2: The Knocking.
Trevor had been driving trucks for about 8 years when this happened. Short hauls mostly, nothing too crazy, usually just from Chicago to Milwaukee and back. It was good money, and he got to sleep in his own bed most nights, which is more than a lot of drivers can say. But in February of 2021, his regular route got changed. His company landed a new contract, and suddenly Trevor was doing longer runs, 3-4 days on the road at a time. He didn't mind too much, the pay was better, and he figured he'd get used to sleeping in the truck. The run that changed everything was supposed to be simple. Pick up a load of furniture in Ohio, deliver it to a warehouse in Montana. 4 days max. Easy money. He picked up the load on a Tuesday afternoon, made good time through Indiana and Illinois, and by midnight he was in Iowa. The plan was to pull into a truck stop near Des Moines, grab some sleep, and start fresh in the morning. The truck stop was one of those big ones. Hundreds of trucks parked in long rows, a building with showers at a restaurant that was still open. Trevor found a spot near the back, away from the road noise, and backed his rig in between 2 other semis. He went inside, got some food, used the bathroom, and came back to his truck around 1 a.m. The place was quiet now, most of the other drivers already asleep in their cabs. Trevor climbed up into his sleeper berth, set his alarm for 6, and closed his eyes. He was just starting to drift off when he heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the side of his truck, on the trailer, not the cab. Trevor opened his eyes. Probably just someone walking past, bumped into it accidentally. He waited, listened. Nothing. He closed his eyes again. Knock, knock, knock. This time louder, definitely deliberate. Someone was knocking on his trailer. Trevor sat up bolt upright. His heart was starting to pound now. That wasn't normal. That wasn't someone just messing around. He grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight, then climbed out of the sleeper berth into the cab. He unlocked the door and opened it, shining the light out into the parking lot. Nothing. No one there. The space between his truck and the ones on either side was empty. No people, no movement. "Hello?" Trevor called out. His voice sounded small in the darkness. The only answer was the wind and the distant hum of idling engines. Trevor stood there for a long moment, shining his light around, looking for any sign of someone. But the parking lot was like a graveyard. All those trucks sitting there, dark and silent, and no people anywhere. He climbed back into the cab and locked the door. His hands were shaking a little. He told himself it was nothing. Maybe a prank, maybe the wind, maybe he'd imagined it. He was just starting to settle back into the sleeper berth when the knocking came back. But this time, it was right outside the cab, right next to his head. Knock, knock, knock. So loud it made Trevor jump. His heart felt like it was going to explode out of his chest. Someone was standing right there, right outside his window, knocking. "What do you want?" Trevor yelled. The knocking stopped. Silence. Heavy, pressing silence. Trevor grabbed his phone again, his fingers fumbling, almost dropping it. He opened the curtain and looked out the window. There was a face looking back at him. Trevor screamed. He couldn't help it. The face was pressed against the glass, pale and dirty, with dark eyes that didn't reflect any light. A man, Trevor thought, though it was hard to tell. The features were wrong somehow, too long, too angular. And it was smiling, the same kind of too wide smile that didn't look human. Trevor scrambled backward, hitting the back wall of the sleeper berth. His phone fell from his hand. The face stayed at the window, pressed against the glass, smiling and staring. Then it raised one hand and knocked again, 3 times, slow, deliberate, never breaking eye contact with Trevor. "Go away!" Trevor shouted. "Get away from my truck!" The face tilted to one side, like a dog hearing a strange sound. The smile got wider. Then it spoke, and Trevor heard its voice through the glass, muffled but clear. "Let me in." "No! Get the hell away!" "Let me in," it repeated. "It's cold out here." Trevor felt like he was going to sick. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. He fumbled for his phone, found it, dialed 911 with shaking fingers.
The operator answered. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone outside my truck, at the truck stop off I-80, near Des Moines. There's someone trying to get in my truck. Okay, sir, stay calm. Are you in danger? Can you describe? The face at the window was gone. Trevor blinked, looking at the empty window. 1 second it had been there, staring at him, and the next, it was just gone. Hello? Sir, are you still there? It's gone. The person is gone. We're sending a unit to your location. Can you stay on the line? Trevor nodded, even though he couldn't see him. He kept staring at the window, waiting for the face to reappear, but it didn't. The window stayed empty. 5 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed across the parking lot. 2 police cars pulled up. Trevor climbed out of his truck, still shaking, and told the officers what happened. They searched the area, checked between the trucks, talked to a few other drivers who were still awake, but no one had seen anything, no one had heard anything, and there was no sign of anyone who shouldn't be there. Probably just some homeless person, one officer said. We get that sometimes at truck stops. They try to scare drivers, see if anyone will give them money to go away. You did the right thing calling us. But Trevor knew it wasn't a homeless person. The way that face had looked, the way it moved, the way it disappeared into nothing. The police stayed for a while, making sure Trevor felt safe. Then they left. Trevor sat in his cab until sunrise, wide awake, jumping at every sound. He didn't sleep at all. When morning came, he got out to do his pre-trip inspection before heading back on the road. He walked around the truck, checking the tires, checking the trailer connection. Everything looked normal, until he got to the side of the trailer, the side where the knocking had started. There were handprints, dozens of handprints going down the entire length of the trailer, like someone had walked from the back to the front, dragging their hands along the metal surface. But here's the thing that made Trevor's blood run cold. The handprints were on the inside of the trailer. Someone or something had been inside his trailer, locked inside, and they'd been trying to get out. Trevor reported it, had his company open the trailer. It was empty, just furniture wrapped in plastic, exactly what was supposed to be there. No sign of anyone, no way anyone could have gotten in or out. The seals hadn't been broken, but those handprints were there. He took pictures. Other drivers saw them. They were real. Trevor finished that run, delivered the furniture to Montana, but when he got back home, he quit. Didn't matter how good the money was, didn't matter that he'd been driving for 8 years, he was done. Because here's what he told me, what he told anyone who would listen. Those handprints were small, like a child's hands, and there was no child in that trailer, no child in any manifesto or loading report. Whatever had been in there, whatever had been knocking, trying to get out, trying to get into his cab, it wasn't human. And Trevor didn't want to know what would have happened if he'd opened that door, if he'd let it in. He still has nightmares about that face at the window, about that smile, about those 3 slow knocks that mean someone, somewhere out there in the dark, wants to come inside.
Story 3. The Following Lights. Kelly was one of those rare female long-haul truckers. She'd been doing it for 12 years, and she'd heard every joke, dealt with every creep at every truck stop, and proved herself 100 times over. She was tough, professional, and didn't scare easy. But what happened to her in Nevada in the summer of 2020 scared her. Scared her so bad she almost quit the road entirely. Kelly was hauling a load of canned goods from California to Colorado. It was July, brutally hot even at night, and she was making her way across Nevada on Highway 50, what they call the loneliest road in America, and it lives up to the name. You can drive for an hour without seeing another car, just empty desert, sagebrush, and mountains in the distance. It was around 11 at night. Kelly had her radio on, AC blasting, just trying to stay alert. She'd been driving since noon and was planning to make it to a truck stop near Ely before calling it a night. Still had about 2 hours to go. That's when she noticed the lights in her mirrors. Headlights coming up fast behind her. Kelly didn't think much of it at first, just another vehicle on the road. But as the lights got closer, she realized they were high up. Another truck, probably. The lights stayed behind her for a few miles, keeping pace, not passing, just following. Kelly kept checking her mirrors, starting to feel a little uneasy. On a road this empty, most people just pass when they get a chance. They don't sit behind you. She slowed down a little, hoping the truck would go around. But it slowed down too, maintaining the same distance, maybe a quarter-mile back, close enough that she could see the headlights clearly, but far enough that she couldn't make out what kind of truck it was. "Okay, weirdo," Kelly muttered to herself. "Do what you want." She tried to ignore it, focusing on the road ahead, but something about those lights in her mirror was bothering her. They didn't look quite right. Too bright, maybe. Too white. And they didn't bob or sway the way headlights usually do when a vehicle drives over uneven road. They just stayed perfectly level, perfectly steady. After about 20 minutes, Kelly had had enough. She grabbed her CB radio. "Hey, truck behind me on westbound 50, you got your ears on?" Static. No answer. "This is the reefer truck you're following. You need to pass or back off, buddy. You're making me nervous." More static. Then, faintly, through the white noise, Kelly heard something. It might have been words, might have been just her imagination, but it sounded like, "Can't stop." Kelly felt a chill run down her spine despite the heat. What was that? Say again? Nothing, just static. She looked in her mirror again. The lights were closer now, definitely closer, maybe an eighth of a mile back. And there was something else she noticed. There were no running lights. Every truck has running lights along the sides, the little orange and red markers. But this truck, if it was a truck, was completely dark except for those two bright headlights. Kelly pressed down on the gas. Her speedometer climbed from 65 to 70, then 75. The posted speed limit out here was 70, but she didn't care. She wanted distance between her and whatever was behind her. The lights kept pace, effortlessly, like her speeding up hadn't made any difference at all. Kelly's heart was starting to pound. This wasn't right. This wasn't normal. She grabbed her phone, thinking maybe she should call someone, but there was no signal. Not unusual out here in the middle of nowhere, but it didn't make her feel any better. She tried the CB again. "Anyone out there? Anyone hearing me?" A burst of static, and then that same faint voice. "Can't stop. Can't stop. Can't stop." "Who is this? What do you want?" "Can't stop driving. Can't stop driving. Can't stop." The voice was desperate, panicked. Kelly's hands tightened on the wheel. "What are you talking about? Just pull over if you need to stop." "Can't stop." The voice was a scream now, distorted and too loud, making her CB speaker crackle. Kelly dropped the handset like it had burned her. The lights were right behind her now, right on her bumper, so close that they flooded her cab with harsh white light, washing out everything in her mirrors. She couldn't see anything except that blinding brightness. Kelly floored it. Her truck screamed up to 80, 85, faster than she should be going with a full load, but she didn't care. She just wanted to get away from those lights. They kept pace, effortlessly, like her speeding up hadn't made any difference at all. Now she could hear something over the sound of her engine, something that shouldn't be there. A loud, grinding whine, like metal scraping against metal, like something mechanical failing, like something dying. "Get away from me!" Kelly screamed at her mirror. "Get away!" The lights got brighter, so bright that she had to squint, her eyes watering, and in that brilliant white glare, she saw something that made her blood freeze. There was no truck. No vehicle at all. The lights were just there, floating in the air behind her, keeping perfect pace with her truck, attached to nothing. Kelly felt like she couldn't breathe. This wasn't possible. This wasn't real. But those lights were there. She could see them, and that grinding sound was getting louder. And then her truck lurched. Something hit her from behind. Not hard, just a bump, like someone tapping their bumper against hers. But there was nothing there, nothing but those lights. Kelly was crying now, barely keeping the truck on the road. "Please," she whispered, "please just leave me alone." Another bump, harder this time. Her truck shuddered. And then, ahead in the darkness, Kelly saw something that made her heart leap. Lights. Real lights, a gas station just off the highway, one of those tiny little places that stay open late for the handful of travelers who come through. She didn't even think. She jerked the wheel, pulling off the highway way too fast, her truck tilting dangerously. She slammed on the brakes and came to a stop in the gas station parking lot, her whole rig shaking. The lights behind her didn't follow. They stayed on the highway, and as Kelly watched in her mirror, breathing hard, they just stopped, hovered there for a moment. Then they turned and continued west, disappearing into the darkness like they'd never existed. Kelly sat there for a long time, shaking, crying, trying to process what had just happened. Finally, she climbed out of her cab on wobbly legs and went inside the gas station. The attendant was an old guy, had to be in his 70s, sitting behind the counter watching a small TV. He looked up when Kelly came in. "You okay, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost." Something was following me, on the highway, some lights. The old man's expression changed, got serious. "What kind of lights?" "Just headlights, but there was nothing attached to them. They were just floating there, and they—" "How far back?" the old man interrupted. "About 15 miles, maybe 20. Why? What?" The old man shook his head. "You're not the first person to see him. Happens maybe once, twice a year. Someone comes in here shook up talking about lights following them on the highway. Lights that don't belong to any vehicle." Kelly stared at him. "What are they?" "Don't know. Nobody knows. Some people say it's a truck driver who crashed out there years ago, still driving his route. Some people say it's something else, something that feeds on fear." He shrugged. "All I know is people who see those lights, they don't stick around. They get off the highway and the lights don't follow. They just keep going west." "Does anyone ever— What happens if you don't get off the highway?" The old man was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "A few years back, they found a truck about 50 miles west of here. Driver was still in the cab, still strapped in, but he was dead. Heart attack, the coroner said. But his eyes were open, and his face—" The old man shook his head. His face was frozen in this expression of pure terror, like he'd seen something so awful his heart just gave out. Kelly felt sick. She'd been so close to whatever fate that driver had met. She stayed at that gas station for 3 hours, waited until she saw the sun starting to lighten the eastern sky. Only then did she get back in her truck and continue her route. She kept her eyes on the road ahead, never looking in her mirrors unless she absolutely had to. She made it to Colorado, delivered her load, but when the next run came up that would take her back through Nevada, she refused, took a different route, even though it added a whole day to the drive. Kelly still drives trucks, still hauls loads across the country, but she won't take Highway 50, won't drive through Nevada at night. And if anyone asks her why, she tells them about the lights, about that grinding sound, about that voice on the CB screaming, "Can't stop." Because out there on the loneliest road in America, something is still driving, still following, still looking for someone who won't get off the highway, someone who keep going, keep driving until it's too late to stop.